as an optometrist, I work with the remaining vision. So I'm not doing anything to change what's going on inside the eye or treating the eye, but instead working with the remaining vision. So we're going to talk about some other things, some other options that might be available if you are experiencing vision loss. So I think Dr. Anagnosti went over a pretty comprehensive overview of the anatomy. And here again is just a picture of the eye, the macula, which is the back part of the eye, which is certainly the area that we're talking about today. So what is a low vision exam? A low vision exam is an optical and functional evaluation to determine whether a patient's vision can be enhanced to participate in desired activities. So that's a lot of big words. What does that mean? Basically what that means is we're going to see how you function in your daily life. What are the things that you want to do that you are no longer able to do? And we're going to try and help you do those. Maybe it's making out a grocery list. Maybe it's paying your bills. Maybe it's reading books you are no longer able to. So those are the things we really specifically address goals that you have. Patient motivation is the most important factor in determining who will be a successful low vision patient. If you have a spouse who has vision loss and you think it's a great idea for them to have a low vision exam, it may be. It might be the best thing they could do. But if they're not interested or if they don't want to, you can't make someone do something you don't want to. And low vision requires a little bit of effort. So it certainly is important that the person who has an exam is motivated and wants to get help and realizes it might take a little bit of extra effort, but certainly will work with your remaining vision. Family reaction, there's also certainly a family component to vision loss. As I said before, if you have a spouse with vision loss, you're also impacted by that. Maybe the spouse used to drive you everywhere and now isn't able to. Maybe the spouse used to pay the bills and now that's your responsibility. So certainly everyone plays a role in vision loss. And everyone should also be encouraged to participate in the vision loss. So, as I said before, I don't work on trying to improve the vision by changing the eye. Vision that has been lost, I'm not going to bring back, but oftentimes there's vision that's remaining, and so that's what we're going to work with. In macular degeneration, it's the very center part of the retina that's affected. The thing about macular degeneration, it's only the center part. You'll never go totally blind from macular degeneration. You'll always have some peripheral vision. And so what we do is work with that peripheral vision. It's like learning anything new. You have to train that, but certainly we can work with that vision. So how is a low vision exam different from a typical eye exam? Well, as I said before, it's very goal-oriented. So in a typical eye exam, certainly you come in and the doctor asks you, what medicines are you taking? Are you allergic to anything? Have you had any eye surgeries before? And they may ask you some goals, but in a low vision exam, we really focus on goals. As I said before, what is it that you want to do? Would you really like to go and play cards with all your friends on Wednesday and you're not able to do that any longer because of your vision? Dr. Anagnosti, if you were paying attention, said something about the ETDRS chart earlier. So this chart here in the center is the ETDRS chart. This is one of the modifications a low vision doctor makes. We don't use the typical chart with the big E because we know many people who have low vision may not see that big E or may only see the big E, but not anything else on the chart. And it's really hard to measure your vision and measure progression in vision when all we have is that big E to look at. So we use this chart, and we can move that closer to you, and so you can see things much bigger. There are also charts we use with numbers that we can bring very close that are very big. So that's one of the ways our low vision exam is different. Also, we use special near cards. we use special near cards. So the near cards, oftentimes if you had to read the near card, it's just big capital letters. You know, it might be an N and then an O and then a P and then a T. Well, what does that really mean? Because you can read the N and the P and the O and the T, does that mean you can read the newspaper? Not necessarily. So we use cards that have sentences on them. So we know if you can read this sentence, then you can probably read a newspaper. So this is another one of the modifications we make in a low vision exam. We check color vision. Macular degeneration can affect our color vision. Sometimes people aren't able to see the numbers in the dots, so we have special color vision tests where people may line up color vision chips. The Amsler grid is certainly important in macular degeneration. It helps monitor the progression of your disease. Certainly it doesn't replace going to monitoring with a doctor, but it can be helpful. And one of the biggest and probably most important thing that's different about a low vision exam is what we call a trial frame refraction. Trial frame refraction. So a refraction is when the doctor puts your head behind that machine, clicks a few things and says, which is better, 1 or 2? Which is better, 1 or 2? When you have low vision, putting your head behind the machine is not the best way to determine a pair of glasses. So a typical eye exam consists of that machine. A low vision doctor knows that someone who has macular degeneration might not have center vision. They need to use their peripheral vision. And so using this special trial frame, we can better use the peripheral vision and we can better determine what prescription of glasses you need. Oftentimes, many doctors say, no glasses are helpful. Probably about half of the patients that come to see me say, well, I was just at the doctor and he said there's nothing else that we can do. But they oftentimes didn't use the special charts. They oftentimes don't use the trial frame refraction. They oftentimes don't have very strong reading glasses or magnifiers or some of the other things. So after we complete the trial frame refraction, then we start looking at devices. This slide is very overwhelming to me. There's a lot of things on this slide. I intentionally made it overwhelming. The reason I did, as you heard before, I teach students who are going to be doctors in low vision. And sometimes they get really excited about the low vision things that are available. And they kind of approach it like this, and they say, oh, let's try this, and then we'll go to some sunglasses, and then we'll try some telescopes, and then we'll look at a large TV remote. And it can be very overwhelming. So a low vision doctor will really guide you as to what would be best for you. So you don't feel like you're just trying all different types of magnifiers and all different types of things. It's really, we come up with a plan and we determine what power you need based on the glasses you have, and we can recommend good devices. So where do we start? Well, magnification. It's a pretty logical place to start. You can't see something? Let's make it bigger and see if you can see it. As I said before, you're never going to lose your side vision, but our side vision is not as fine as our central vision. The macula has the most fine vision. The macula is responsible for reading. But if we use our side vision, which is not quite as fine, sometimes by blowing things up and by magnifying things, we're able to see them. Now, most people, or many people would assume, if I showed you this, all of these magnifiers, that this big one here must be the strongest. That's what most people think, is the biggest magnifier must be the strongest. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. The strongest one is the smallest one. That's just the way lenses are designed, and I know it's very frustrating. I can't tell you how many people come in and say, can't you just give me a magnifier that'll cover the entire newspaper? I'd like a magnifier to cover the whole newspaper. But a magnifier that covers the whole newspaper is so weak that most people cannot use it. Most people who have low vision are not able to use those page magnifiers. In fact, I don't even have any in my clinic. Those are good for people who are older and just maybe need a little bit of extra help, but may not have macular degeneration. So not only does the field of view, which field of view means the area of the lens, it decreases, but also the working distance decreases. So that means the stronger the magnifier, the closer you have to hold it. Or the stronger the pair of glasses, the closer you have to hold something to be able to read it clearly. So someone who has macular degeneration sees this spot. A normal eye is going to see a normal image with the two children's faces. The other person is going to see this spot right in the center. And what's frustrating is it's right what you're pointing your eyes at. It's right what you're pointing your macula at. I have many people come in and say, I just wish I could see people's faces. What can I do? I can't see people's faces. Well, I tell them that's because you're pointing your macula at whatever you're looking at. So if you can't see someone's face, that's because you've grown up your entire life, you've looked at people in the eyes when you speak to them. So you're pointing your macula right at their eyes. And so that means their eyes are the spot that's going to be blurry. So oftentimes, I give my patients the trick that maybe try and look at their chest. Maybe try and look at their forehead. Maybe try and look to one ear or the other, because then you're pointing your macula at my chest if you're looking at my chest, and that's going to be the blurred spot. And then maybe you'll see my head using your peripheral vision. That's really how peripheral vision works, and that's really some of the things we train when we're working with macular degeneration. So the simplest thing is just a pair of glasses, and I get this request a lot. Along with the, can't you just give me a magnifier that covers the whole page? I get a lot of people that say, can't you just give me glasses that will help me see? So that would be great if I could. That's not always the case. But there are very strong reading glasses, stronger than you can get at Walmart or Walgreens if you go to the counter and look at the numbers. We have glasses that are much stronger than that. They start to get very thick. And there's also demand on your eyes to turn in when you're using very thick glasses. So they often put these prism. Here you can see the prism. It's a little thicker towards the nose. But these glasses can be very helpful. One of the things, the downsides of the glasses is as they get stronger, you do have to hold things much closer. So some of these you may have to hold as close as 4 or 5 inches from your face. Not everyone is happy reading the newspaper 4 or 5 inches from their face. But some people say, you know what, I don't care. I used to have a patient who would come in and her nose would be black every time I would see her. And that's because her glasses were so strong that she literally had to hold the newspaper up against her nose to see. And she was thrilled. She loved doing it because she could still read the newspaper. So there are options, but that's not an option for everybody. So this is a spectacle-mounted telescope. These are popular. In some cases, they're oftentimes challenging to use with macular degeneration, but they can be beneficial. Here you can see someone who's using this. It's called a telemicroscope. So if he were to take, there's a cap on the end. If he were to take that cap off the end, he can see to distance. He puts the cap on and he can see up close to do things like look at his phone or look at a price tag or read a menu, all different sorts of things. Certainly one of the benefits, it's hands-free. So you don't have to use one hand to hold a magnifier and use one hand to do something else. You have both of your hands available. Again, one of the benefits that may be a little more difficult to try and use, but certainly if you have issues with dexterity and aren't able to hold a magnifier, it might be an option. And then we have handheld magnifiers. Now many people come in with handheld magnifiers that they've purchased, they've picked up at some drugstore, and they're good. And if you're getting along with them, that's great. They're not going to damage your eyes if you got them at, sometimes I have patients say, well, I got this at Walmart, and they whisper to me and think that I'll be upset or that maybe it's not good for their eyes. A magnifier is okay. A doctor can certainly give you a suggestion as to which one is the appropriate power. It's not going to ruin your eyes if you use the wrong power. It might just make your eyes tired quicker. So I think it's worthwhile to figure out the one that's most appropriate. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Some of them, like these here in the center, do have a light on them. So that's very helpful, especially when you're at the restaurant. Restaurants are very dark. It's hard to try and read a menu. So having a magnifier that has a light with it can be very helpful. Going to the grocery store, some corners in the grocery store where you're trying to look at a price tag might be a little blurry, so that can be helpful there. Some of them are very compact. They fold up right in your pocket. So certainly having one of these to take with you on the go is helpful. The downside is you do have to hold it. So you don't have both your hands free. And if you have tremors or you have some problems with your dexterity, this might not be the best type of magnifier for you. And then we have stand magnifiers. Stand magnifiers are called stand magnifiers because they stand on the page. So these you don't have to hold while you're reading. They do have a handle here. So you use the handle to pull it along, but you don't have to hold it up. You set it actually right down on the newspaper, and then you would just slide it along. With these type of magnifiers, you do need to use a bifocal. With the handheld, you don't necessarily have to, but with this type of magnifier, you need to use a bifocal so that it's clear. The downside to this type of magnifier, it's not quite as portable. It's a little bit bigger, so it's harder to stick in your purse and take with you when you go places. So that's why the handheld's a little more helpful for that. And then we have dome magnifiers. I really like dome magnifiers. They're hard to break. You can drop it on the floor, and it's just a little chunk of plastic. They gather light from the surroundings, and so they illuminate. And you can see here, it makes things a little bit bigger and pretty simple to use. Again, like the stand magnifier, you don't have to hold it. You just put it on the paper and slide it along. So if you don't have the dexterity, you don't have to worry about holding something that might get heavy in your hand. This is probably one of my favorite magnifiers. And again, I have no interest in the company. I don't receive anything from the company, but this is a magnifier I really like. I call it a wedge magnifier. It's probably in the family of dome magnifiers. It has a light, and so you can see here how much brighter and how much bigger it makes things. And you just slide it right along. And unlike the dome, which is round, it actually has squared off edges, so you can follow along on a column in a newspaper. It makes it a little bit easier, or in trying to read your electric bills or something like that. So I really like these magnifiers. And then the new thing is the electronic magnifiers. Look just like cell phones, and they have options where this one you can see it changes color, so it might be easier to see white letters on a dark background. These are great. They certainly are more expensive than our other magnifiers. Some of the magnifiers I was showing you previously might start around $45 and go up to $200 or so. These typically start around $400, and some of them can go up to about $1,000, but this one here is right around $400. So they certainly are more expensive. That's probably their biggest disadvantage. And you also do have to be comfortable with technology. Not everyone's comfortable with technology, but if you are, this is a great option, and it's a great way to make things very big. You can make things bigger with electronic magnifiers than any other type of magnifiers. And the closed circuit TV. So many of you have probably seen these before or heard of these before. What this is, it's a machine, and you're able to put whatever you're trying to read underneath. And it enlarges quite a bit. There's lots of different levels. The nice thing about this, you can write underneath it, you could fill out a check, and you can actually see your hand as you're writing. So you're able to stay on the lines, do those types of things. Now these machines are much more expensive. They typically start around $2,500, can go up to about $4,000. But they can be very helpful. If your main enjoyment comes from reading, this may allow you to read, and it might be worth that money for you. And then something that's new that I get a lot of questions about are some of the new e-readers. Maybe you've heard of the Kindle or the iPad or some of those things. They certainly have options where you can make things larger and be able to read. So here we have the Kindle over here, and you can see how much bigger the print is than a normal size book. You can download the books to the Kindle, and many people have come in already using Kindles, so that's a great thing. And over here on the other side, we have the iPad, which has the same options. The iPad also gives you the opportunity to make the background black and the letters white, and some people really prefer that. So that certainly is an option. Again, if you're not really keen on technology, it might not be the best option for you, but it certainly is something that's out there, and I get more and more questions about that. So those are some of the near things. Switching to distance, we think of telescopes. So they're handheld telescopes. They help you spot things. I don't do a whole lot of telescopes for patients who have macular degeneration. I think the primary use I have for these is for kids who are in school who have vision loss so they can see the board. There might be some appropriate use, but not a lot, because you have to hold the telescope up, and sometimes it's challenging to scan around, and it might be good if you're going places on your own to see street signs, or if you're in the grocery store and want to see reading what label it is in each aisle. These are really popular telescopic TV glasses. Probably one of my most popular things that we go through in the clinic. You can adjust them on either side, and they make the TV about 2 times larger, which actually brings the TV about 2 times closer. So they're very, very helpful. They don't work for everyone. If you have a high prescription, or if you have a lot of astigmatism, they may not work for you. If you have one eye that's very strong in a certain power, and the other eye that's maybe not so strong in that power, they might not work for you. But they do work for a lot of people, and a lot of people enjoy watching the television. So if you spend a lot of time watching the television, this might be something that would be beneficial for you. The nice thing is they're hands-free. So like the first telescope I showed you, you don't want to sit watching a television program holding the telescope up. But to sit for an hour and put those on your face isn't quite so bad. And then there are other things that are similar, different types of binoculars. There are telescopes for driving. We don't allow driving with telescopes in the state of Florida. You can't use a telescope to meet the driving requirements. But in some states, they are used for driving. They can be used for all different sorts of things. This is the picture we had before with the gentleman who was looking at his phone. If he were to take the cap off the end, he could use that telescope to look far away. And here we have someone who you would walk around wearing this. You look through the lenses. And then as you want to see distance, you tip your head down and look through the telescope at distance. So that's the way it's used for driving. It might also be used that way here for walking, for possibly watching television, although you'd have to have your chin tipped down a little bit to watch television through this because it's typically mounted at the top of the frame. And one thing that I can't stress enough is the importance of lighting. I help so many people with glasses in my office. They go home, they come back, and they say these glasses just don't work. Maybe we change the prescription, they go home, they come back, the glasses just don't work. Then we realize that it's the lighting. They're not using appropriate lighting. And actually that doesn't happen too much because I once was giving a lecture about lighting, and one of the doctors in the audience said, I had a patient, I made his glasses 6 times before finally I got tired and I went to the patient's house and I realized his house was all dark paneling and he only had 1 lamp and it had a 30-watt bulb and he was trying to read. And so he brought the guy a new lamp and all of a sudden the new glasses worked. So lighting is certainly very important. And that story, which I heard probably 10 years ago now. Since then, I always talk about lighting. So there are certain types of daylights. There are OT lights. Here you can see at the top a picture that is just done under regular lighting, and then down below with the daylight. You can see the colors look much better. It's hard to tell that the print is easier to see, but it's much easier to see. And something I discovered accidentally on my own was that these new light bulbs they make, the new curly Q spiral light bulbs, they make them in daylight. I didn't know they did. I purchased some new light bulbs for my home. I brought them in, I put them in, and my whole apartment or my whole condo was glowing blue. It was so bright, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and I looked at the package and it said daylight. It was too much light for me, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to take these to the office. I took them to the office, and the low vision patients love them. They just help so much. And you can get a package of daylight bulbs for maybe $15. You can certainly get hot lights, but they're a little more expensive. So the daylight bulbs you could put all around your house. So I have lots of people who have switched out the bulbs in their bathrooms, in their kitchens, all over to these daylight bulbs, and it really makes it like outside, inside your house. Other things that are helpful, we call this a typoscope. It's just a line guide. Helps you keep your place when you're trying to sign things, if your name tends to go uphill or downhill. It also can help you see just a little better by highlighting what you're seeing and blacking out the background. So we use those quite often. And then 20/20 pens. They're just Sharpies that don't bleed through the paper. Makes things like making grocery lists much easier. So the definition of legal blindness is 2200 or worse in the better seeing eye with best correction. So if your vision is 2200 or worse with glasses or with contact lenses or with nothing, you would be considered legally blind. Or if you have a field of 20 degrees or less. So why is that important? If you are legally blind, you're eligible for an income tax exemption if you're still paying income tax. So certainly make sure if you're legally blind, your doctor gives you a letter so you can give it to your tax attorney or your accountant when they're preparing your taxes, and you'll receive a tax credit. Transportation services, many of you may be aware of some of them that we have in Broward County. You're eligible for a handicap parking sticker. Now you're not going to be driving, but whoever is driving you around can get the parking sticker and put it in their car. Free directory assistance, which might be something you weren't aware of. It's difficult for you to look a number up in a phone book, so you can dial 411 and get the number at no cost. And even the grocery store. Some of the grocery stores here, Publix specifically, if you'll go to Publix and tell them that you're legally blind, they'll provide someone to go with you around the store and help read labels for you and different types of things. So that's something that's helpful. And then just be aware of the community resources. There are lots of things that are out there. The Division of Blind Services, the Lighthouse of Broward, there are lighthouses all around the state and the country. And then support groups. There's different support groups, certainly, which can also be important. And that's it.